All right, so you're here with us because you want to get to the bottom of things, right? You want to understand like what's really going on in the world and how it all fits together.
That's it.
And today we're going deep on something that's kind of always there in the background of global events. This economic clash between Russia and the U.S.
Right.
Now, at first glance, it seems like a pretty simple story, like a total mismatch, a
Yeah.
huge economic powerhouse versus, a much smaller player.
Yeah.
But the more we dug into this, the more we realized that there's a lot more going on here.
Way more.
And some pretty surprising stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, you can't just look at the raw numbers.
Right,
When
exactly.
you first look at the scale of things, it's easy to see why people make that, David and Goliath comparison.
Okay.
Russia's economy is around $1.7 trillion, which, it's a lot of money.
It's something.
But it's absolutely dwarfed by the U.S. economy,
Oh, yeah.
which is a massive $26 trillion.
Yeah, sure.
To put that in perspective, Russia's entire economic output is smaller than the state of Texas.
Seriously. Wow.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're talking like a whole different league here, right?
Absolutely.
And when you look at what drives these economies, the contrast is just as stark.
Totally.
Russia, it's heavily reliant on oil and gas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those sectors make up something like 40% of their government revenue.
Yeah, it's a big chunk.
And then you've got the U.S. with this sprawling tech sector, which alone generates over $2 trillion.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
So the question is, how does a country like Russia, with a smaller economy that's so dependent on just a couple of things, how do they manage to exert so much influence on the world stage?
That's the really interesting part, right? It's all about leverage.
Leverage.
Yeah, they found ways to exploit strategic vulnerabilities.
Okay, I'm listening.
For years, Europe was hooked on Russian energy.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And Moscow, they knew how to use that to their advantage.
So they basically weaponized that dependence.
Exactly.
It's like a smaller player finding a way to punch above their weight.
Yeah, they found a pressure point and they weren't afraid to use it.
So it's not just about how much money you have, it's about how you use it.
Right, and the U.S. might have this massive tech sector, but they've got their own set of problems.
Like what?
Well, persistent inflation, for one,
Uh-huh.
and then there's that huge national debt.
Yeah, that's not going away anytime soon.
It's a complex picture.
So it's not a clear win for either side?
No, it's more like a stalemate.
A strategic stalemate.
Yeah, and then you throw sanctions into the mix.
Right. Sanctions were supposed to cripple Russia's economy.
That was the idea, but it's not that simple.
What happened?
Well, they've had to adapt, and economist Maria Snegovaya, she points out that these sanctions have actually forced Russia to look for new partnerships.
Okay, so who are they turning to?
Primarily China.
China. Interesting.
Yeah, and they're exploring alternative financial systems like cryptocurrency.
So that they're finding ways around the traditional systems.
Exactly, and it raises a big question for us.
What's that?
How sustainable are these moves in the long run?
Right. Are these just temporary fixes, or are they laying the groundwork for something bigger?
That's what we need to figure out.
And just as we're trying to wrap our heads around all that, then boom, the war in Ukraine breaks out.
Yeah, that was a game changer.
And it throws everything into chaos.
It really reshaped global markets in ways that nobody could have predicted.
So what were some of the biggest impacts? What did this actually mean for the average person?
Well, for one, global prices, wheat prices jumped up by about 30%,
Wow.
which fed directly into the inflation that everyone's feeling at the grocery store.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that.
And then there's the energy crisis in Europe.
Oh, man, that was huge.
Energy costs spiked by an unbelievable 400% right after the conflict started.
400%. I mean, that's just insane.
It was a massive shock to the system.
So what did they do? How did Europe deal with that kind of volatility?
They had to scramble to find new sources of energy.
Right, because they couldn't rely on Russia anymore.
Exactly, and that's where the U.S. comes in.
Okay, so the U.S. steps in to fill the gap.
Yeah, they start sending over liquefied natural gas, or LNG.
So America becomes a major energy supplier for Europe.
It's a big shift in the energy landscape.
And it creates this kind of weird situation.
How so?
Well, the U.S. economy benefits from these increased LNG exports.
Right.
But at the same time, every day, Americans are getting hit by inflation that's partly fueled by, global energy prices.
It's a double-edged sword.
So it's like we're helping out, but also kind of getting hurt at the same time.
It's just how interconnected everything is.
Yeah, how complicated.
Yeah, there's no easy answers here.
And let's not forget about Russia's willingness to use its energy resources as a weapon.
Oh, absolutely. They've shown they're not afraid to play hardball.
And then there was that whole thing with the Nord Stream pipelines.
Oh, man, that was a wild one.
Sabotage explosions. I mean, it was like something out of a movie.
It sent shockwaves through the energy market.
This is a huge deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It showed how vulnerable these critical systems are.
And how quickly things can change.
Right. While Russia was relying on pipelines, the U.S. was quietly becoming the world's top LNG exporter.
So the balance of power was shifting.
Yeah, it was happening right under our noses.
But if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
you have to wonder about the future of both countries' dominance in the energy sector.
What do you mean?
Well, the world is moving towards green energy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's the big trend.
Solar panels, wind farms, all that stuff.
It's the future.
And it has the potential to disrupt everything we know about the energy market.
For sure.
Imagine a world where fossil fuels are basically irrelevant.
That would change everything.
Especially for countries like Russia and the U.S. that are so dependent on oil and gas.
They'd have to adapt or get left behind.
It's like a whole new game is starting.
And it's fascinating to think about who the winners and losers will be.
Okay, so we've talked about energy, but let's move on to another big piece of this economic puzzle.
Okay.
Sanctions.
Ah, yes. The big stick.
The U.S. and its allies have used sanctions as a primary tool to punish Russia for its actions.
Right, but there's a lot of debate about how effective they've actually been.
So are they working or not?
It's complicated. We've seen some mixed results.
Like what?
Well, after an initial drop, the Russian ruble actually rebounded pretty significantly.
So they weathered the storm.
In a way, yeah, but there's also been a massive brain drain from Russia.
What do you mean?
A lot of skilled workers and professionals, they've decided to leave the country.
Because of the sanctions.
Yeah, they're looking for opportunities elsewhere.
So Russia is losing some of its best and brightest.
Yeah, it's a long-term problem for them.
And the geopolitical fallout goes beyond just Russia and the West.
Oh, absolutely. This is playing out on a global scale.
For example, we're seeing the BRICS nations, they're trying to move away from using the U.S. dollar in international trade.
Yeah, they're pushing for de-dollarization.
And apparently, over 20 countries are now trading in their own currencies, like the Chinese yuan and the Indian rupee.
It's a direct challenge to the dollar's dominance.
So is this the beginning of the end for the dollar as the world's reserve currency?
Well, Ben Steele from the Council on Foreign Relations, he makes an interesting point.
What's that?
He says the dollar isn't going to disappear overnight.
Okay, so it's not dead yet.
No, but it's facing more competition than ever before.
So the dollar's power might be waning.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on.
So this global economic tug of war, it might seem kind of abstract, right?
Yeah, it's easy to think it doesn't affect us directly.
But it really does have tangible effects on our everyday lives.
Absolutely. It's not just numbers on a screen.
It's impacting things like gas prices, job markets, even interest rates.
Yeah, it's all connected.
And the way these pressures play out, it varies depending on where you are in the world.
Right.
Europe, for example, they've been on the brink of recession because of the energy crisis.
Yeah, they've been hit hard.
But then you hear stories about people in Russia resorting to things like kitchen gardens to make ends meet.
It's amazing how people adapt.
It really highlights the different ways that people are feeling the squeeze.
And it makes you realize that we're all caught up in this global struggle in one way or another.
It's hard to escape it.
You can't just ignore what's happening out there.
So at the end of the day, is there a clear winner in this economic battle?
It's really hard to say. It's such a complex situation with so many moving parts.
There are so many variables and unpredictable outcomes.
It's like trying to predict the weather.
And that's why we want to bring you this deep dive to break it all down.
We've tried to give you a clearer picture of the forces at play, the surprising twists and turns, and what it all means for you.
Now it's up to you to weigh the evidence and draw your own conclusions.
Right. Think critically about what you've heard and decide for yourself.
Because the big question is this: looking ahead, will it be Russia's resilience and ability to adapt?
Or America's knack for innovation and economic dynamism?
Who will come out on top in this economic showdown?
It's a question that's still unfolding.
And as we look to the future, there's one more piece of this puzzle that we need to talk about.
What's that?
China's potential role in supporting Russia's economy.
Yes. The wild card.
It's a complicated issue with huge implications for how this whole thing plays out.
It's a whole other can of worms.
And that's exactly what we'll be digging into in our next deep dive.
So stay tuned for that.
Because in the end, economics isn't just some abstract concept.
It's about real people's lives.
It affects how we live, how we work, and how we navigate the world around us.
It's about survival.
So stay informed, keep thinking critically, and join us next time as we continue to explore the forces that are shaping our future.
We'll see you then.
All right, thanks for listening.
Take care.